Do you find it hard to explain to friends and family what you now do? Are you wasting valuable time by attempting to figure out challenges on your own? We have created a community for ex-corporate people running their own business who want to live a life they love whilst giving back to their community. This is the Build, Live, Give show. We bring you first-hand experiences of guests going through many of the struggles you face each and every day. We get real with no corporate BS. And now your host, Paul Higgins.
Welcome to the Build, Live, Give podcast, episode number 22. I'm Paul Higgins and I'm your show host. And today I'm very excited to have Louise Griffiths from Left Brain Online Marketing on the show. She started her journey as an event and conference organizer, and she spent quite a bit of time in that industry, and then she went on and did some schooling. So she was a mature aged student doing some marketing. And from there, she went out, was a VA, was helping clients with social and online and digital. And she finally took the brave step to create her own agency. And she sort of talks through that journey. And she also has some wonderful quotes around an ideal client. And you'll thoroughly enjoy listening to Louise. So what's been happening in the community, it continues to grow. So thank you for all those 5-star reviews. And if you're listening to this for the first time, or if you've loved listening to prior shows, please leave a 5-star review. They really make a big difference. And also subscribe to the podcast so it's easy for you to get these episodes ready for you to consume each week. And if you want to find more about Build, Live, Give, just go to the website buildlivegive.com, and also you can check out our free Facebook closed group for Build, Live, Give. And it's really about spreading the word around ex-corporates or ex-career people that are going out and building their own small business. They're living a great life and they want to give back to their community. So what I'll do now is pass you over to Louise Griffiths from Left Brain Online Marketing. But before we dive into today's show, leaving corporate to run your own business can be extremely hard and lonely. You start off in a euphoric state, and at some point you look at your cash flow and start to doubt your abilities. What you learn in corporate doesn't always translate, and you are bombarded every day with new challenges. Learning something yourself is okay, but it can be both timely and costly. Friends and family want to help, but they don't have the specific experiences you need. This is why we created the Build, Live, Give community, a free community with hundreds of people just like you, answering questions and sharing real experiences, and definitely no spam. This, coupled with weekly interviews on hot topics, will help you expedite success. Search for the Build, Live, Give group in Facebook and answer the 3 questions to gain access. Anyway, enough from me. Now it's time to hand you over to one of the BLG members to hear their wonderful journey. Today we're going to hear a lot more about your journey, but why don't you kick off with a bit of backstory for us, Louise?
Yeah, absolutely. So, great to be here today. And I guess mine, is interesting in that how I started my business is a little bit different from how most people go about it. So my background originally was actually in event management and conference management. And after doing that for a little while, I decided to go back and get my marketing degree. Went to uni as a mature age student, and I enjoyed that degree. But as I kind of got to the middle of it, realized that it probably wasn't the degree that I needed as much as just the confidence to kind of up ship and go into a different career, so to speak. So I got headhunted to a digital advertising agency while I was still doing my degree to become a social media manager for them. And that's really where I got my passion for online marketing and social media and Facebook and stuff like that. So, I worked for them throughout my degree and for a few years after that, and then got approached by someone who wanted me to work for them full time. Well, not full time, but as a VA actually, part time. And had some other clients that needed help too. So I was very fortunate. And when I started my business, that I was kind of almost handed everything I needed to feel like I could make that jump. But I've now been running my online agency for about 3 or 4 years and really enjoying it.
Excellent. And what's something that the BLG listeners wouldn't know about you that your friends or family would? What's something, outside of work?
Yeah, great question. I think that, fitness is a big part of my life. And, I competed in gymnastics when I was little and did a lot of competitions and won a lot of medals when I was little doing that. And even now, I make sure that I've got goals outside of my business related to that. So, whatever weights that may be. But my family and friends always make fun of my weightlifting videos and things like that. So it's definitely something that the business community might not know, but that is actually really important to my business. I think it gives me a lot of balance.
Excellent. And look, I must admit, I don't laugh at you. I laugh with you. I watch those videos on Facebook. So
it's always a conversation starter, that's for sure.
That's great. You got to put yourself out there. That's
it.
That's great. And was there anything at all that was sort of holding you back from going out and running your own agency?
I think for me, there's always that kind of confidence and fear, I think, are always the two big things, even now when I talk to other people when they're starting their businesses. And, definitely for me, even though, I feel in a lot of ways that I was very lucky and that I was kind of given my first couple of clients, you still got that fear of, well, that means that if one of them no longer need me, what does that mean for my business, And for a long time, I really struggled with, what my colleagues would think about me about leaving and doing my own thing, the people that I'd been working with, and really whether it was the right decision for me in the long term, or whether this was just kind of the excuse to perhaps do something different at that time because I wasn't, that happy with, where I was. But yeah, just that fear and confidence is always, it always comes up even now. I don't think that changes, but perhaps the reasons behind it do.
Yeah, and some of the ways that you cope with that, I know that, like you said, it's always there, but what are some of the coping mechanisms you use to help with that?
I think I've just learned to, dive in. I think that for anyone who wants to run their own business, you're going to have to get used to playing outside of your comfort zone. I think it's one of the most important lessons that I learned early on is that if you feel uncomfortable and you feel that kind of fear, then you're probably doing the right thing. And getting stuck in your comfort zone, whether it be in your business or whether it be in a career, is almost more dangerous than kind of taking that leap, And I think too, just going, well, what's the worst case scenario? For me, quitting my job and starting my business the way I did. I mean, the worst case scenario was that after 6 months, it didn't work out and I needed to go and find another job, and yes, okay, there's issues around finding a job, it's not like you kind of land into it, but having the skill set I didn't feel like that was a massive issue, that I was going to be unemployed for 2 years struggling or anything like that. So I think coming up with worst case scenarios really, is kind of helps move you forward and just taking that leap.
Yeah, look, I think that's great advice. And I think around that comfort zone, for me, I didn't realize that a lot of people in corporate actually love being in their comfort zone.
Yeah.
And that's why they're in the security of corporate.
Exactly.
And I just couldn't understand why I always seemed to be beating to a different drum. And now I know why, because I love being uncomfortable. I love new challenges. I love the excitement of that. And that's why I think running my own business is a lot better suited to my personality than sort of being an entrepreneur within corporate.
And I think that's why sometimes, when I talk to people and they're like, oh, I want to start my own businesses, I truly think that not everyone is cut out to run their own business. And I don't mean that from a negative point of view. I just feel like some people work really well outside of their comfort zone and some people don't. And I think that everyone should give it a go. But if you feel like being, I guess, in that kind of state of, it's not nervousness, but I guess it's kind of that sort of feeling. I mean, if that drains you very, very quickly and, you can't sleep and you can't do things, then it's going to be really difficult for you to grow a business that gives you something that your career didn't. I know people who start their own businesses and basically what they do is create themselves a job and then they can kind of get back into that comfort zone and then they feel good about it. And I think, that's the big difference between really a contractor and someone who wants to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And what about running your own business? What sort of help have you got during that journey?
Yeah.
What sort of help have you got?
I think one of the important things I did early on was really kind of try and get out there and get to know people in the industry and just listen to what people were saying. And, I learned quite quickly that, people didn't always have everything kind of, together. Just because they were big in the industry or because they ran a big business, it didn't mean that they got up every morning knowing exactly how the day was going to go or exactly what they needed to do in order to grow their business. And I think that was something that gave me a lot of confidence early on talking to those sorts of people. I also invested in a business coach, and it was the biggest monetary investment I have ever made in anything in my entire life. I didn't own any property at that stage, and it was a massive leap of faith. But I understood my own downfalls, and I struggle a lot with self-confidence, definitely earlier on anyway, and second guessing myself. And, I needed someone that could work with me and work through that. And they introduced me to a lot of other people that were in their program, and some of them became my clients, and then they knew other people, and it kind of, snowballs from there. And especially for people that are starting service-based businesses, you only need a couple of clients who absolutely love you to really get you set early on, because they do refer you to other people. And I think that was something really important that kind of gave me a good, solid foundation.
Yeah, look, I completely agree. And, so often I listen to a lot of podcasts as well as, interviewing people. And, that's a common theme, that the people that really got a kickstart like you did is actually investing in a business coach or in a community that can support you. So I think that's sound advice.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is too that, that was kind of post the original clients that I left my job to start working with. And I think that, for me, that the initial work that I did when I first left my job wasn't necessarily what I knew I wanted to do forever, but right then it was a great way for me to kind of get stuck in and understand the industry. I started off more as a VA and an online business manager, and that kind of gave me the in-depth knowledge of how businesses run from day to day, what the gaps in the market were, what other people were struggling with, and then I would help their clients with things as well. And so it gave me a really good understanding that, this may not be the job I want to do forever, but it's giving me access to the people that I want to work with. And then I was able to hire the business coach and go, this is the gaps that I'm seeing. This is what I want to do. How do I get there? So I think that was another important part of the process that's good to cover.
Yeah, no, great advice. And it's sort of, that Malcolm Gladwell, that 10,000 hours, I think that sort of resonates with what you were saying. So the next section is around the build section. It takes us into what you do today. So if you walk into a networking event, meet someone for the first time, they say, so Louise, what do you do? How do you answer that?
For most people, and I guess it depends whether I'm in a room of online savvy online businesses or whether I'm in a room of business owners. But generally, I'll say to people that I'm an online marketing agency that specializes in working with service and online product based businesses to grow their business through marketing. Now, obviously, in an online setting where there's people that are used to, webinars and podcasts and things, then, that perhaps is described in sales funnels and that sort of language. So it depends what room I'm in, but generally speaking, that's what I do.
Great. And how do you currently make revenue?
So I have a bit of a split in terms of what I do. We do a lot of marketing strategy and a lot of data analysis of what's going on in businesses at the moment. If we're looking to work with people, we generally then do tech implementation with them as well. So building out their email marketing systems, building landing pages. Some people we just do implementation with. They come with the strategy in mind, and they just need someone who can build it out. And then we also do Facebook ads as well. So they're kind of the big three things that we do. Some people do all three with us. Some people just do one. We find a lot of the time that people who come in for Facebook ads will generally move up to those other services.
Okay, great. And sort of describe your ideal client.
I guess I've got two. Maybe you're not meant to, but I do. I do, because the reason that there's two for me is because, like I said before, there's huge discrepancies in terms of education between a traditional offline business and someone who has always been online and understands an online environment. And I do work with both, and generally we do the same things, but we approach it differently. So, and this goes for people who I'm doing marketing with as well. I always say to them that you need to meet your clients where they're at, and the education level and the language that they use is really where you need to start, regardless of what they need. And I kind of have to take my own advice in that part. So, either I'll work with a fairly offline business, a professional service, or an accountant, or a dance studio, for instance, or a gym, and how I approach it in terms of the way that I work with them is different, but generally the output is the same as working with someone who sells online courses or is an online business coach, and knows webinars, has done webinars in the past. They still need those lead generation components, but we kind of come at it from a different way, but the outcome's the same.
Great. And what are some of the biggest challenges you face in running your agency now?
Oh, that's a really good question. The big one is really staff. And I think for any business that's growing, staff is always a big challenge. I know even for my clients, hiring really great staff is always tricky, and it gets easier as your business grows, I think. But those first kind of few key people are probably the hardest people to hire for in your business. You're always kind of balancing the money that's coming into a business with the money that needs to go out in order to start sustaining staff. And as soon as you start hiring, it becomes a whole different ballgame. That's definitely been one of the biggest challenges. And over time, as well as my business has grown, we've had to shift the way that we deliver services and what we offer. And that comes with its own challenges too, because every time you offer something new, you don't really know how the market's going to, react to it. So, but I think staff is probably the big one.
Yeah, and your team, where do they reside? Are they all within your office, or are they spread out? Tell us a bit.
No, so my agency is completely virtual. So my team are wherever they want to be at any given time. I have a couple of people that I rely on more than others, but I have a much wider spread of contractors that I use for specific jobs with specific software. And then I've got some that I rely on a more regular basis, either here in Australia or in the US. Predominantly, that's the two places that they are.
Okay, excellent. And if you sort of track back through your journey of running your own business, what's one big mistake that you may have made, and what's a lesson you can draw out of that for the BLG listeners?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, one of my biggest lessons has been around staff, and the balancing that need to hire with cash flow and how long it really does take to train someone the way that you need them to perform in your business. And you have to understand that no one is ever going to be able to do it just like how you do it, or generally speaking anyway, unless you have you can hire them for very, very specific tasks. And so, for instance, for me, if I want to hire someone for my agency, say to support the Facebook ad side, then all of a sudden I need a huge increase in the number of clients that I'm bringing on that need Facebook ads in order to cover that cost. But I can't take those clients on until I've trained that person up the way I need them to perform that service. So, there is that constant juggling act. And in the past, certainly over the last few years, as my business has grown, that has been a big challenge that I've constantly had to work on is understanding exactly who I need in order to grow my business. And just because I can do this task, should I be doing this task? Or is this the sort of task I should be outsourcing? Regardless of whether that is, staff to help support the things I do in my agency, or whether that be staff to help manage my agency, whether that be business support staff or whether that be agency staff. So I think that sometimes, though, you have to make those mistakes in order to know what you do and don't need, and that's why I guess I'm grateful that I do hire virtually, because, the people that I hire understand that they aren't there for a job that they can be in for 3 years necessarily, that it may just be a short-term contract, and then we'll see how it goes. So, hiring people virtually does give me that flexibility. The downside is that you can't hire someone full-time, certainly here in Australia, full-time as a contractor, without treating them like an employee from a tax perspective and things like that. So you have to make the jump at some point to committing, which is always scary in any business, to have fixed costs.
Yeah, look, I totally agree. And, we work with a lot of our clients around sort of trying to reduce that cash flow risk. So first, automate as much as possible. So they're your digital workforce. Then
Exactly.
It's your virtual team. And like you said, on a contract basis. And then you may finally have someone local. And I so often I see, yes, that cash flow becomes a real risk when you do it the other way around. So I think it's great learnings that you've shared, and hopefully some listeners, the BLG community listening to this, that are about to hire people can actually take those learnings and apply into their business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when you come from a corporate background, you maybe don't realize that you can just hire someone for 5-6 hours a week. I think that when a lot of people start out, they think that hiring traditional staff is the easiest, the best, the safest thing to do. And I think they're definitely looking at the support that someone like a VA can give you. I mean, that's how I started my business. You can give you the support you need without having to find them something to do to fill 40 hours a week.
Yeah. And look, these days I say to most people that I work with is that you need a mobile phone, which everyone has. You need some form of a laptop, desktop, and you need a VA.
Yeah.
They're the essentials these days for running a small business. And I implore anyone out there listening to this in the BLG community that doesn't have a VA, seriously consider it, because from Louise, from other people we've got that have gone and got a VA, it can make a massive difference, positive difference. Yeah. So the next question is around if the support of a partner. So how does your current partner support you? And if they're listening to this podcast, what would you like to say to them?
I think like a million thank yous is probably in order. My my partner Brett puts up with a lot, I must say. Late nights, announcing that I need to spend more money to make more money. He really does go on a leap of faith sometimes and goes, you know what, I trust you. If you think we need to spend this money, we'll spend this money. And every time I mention it to him, the amount just gets a little bit higher each time, just till I see where that threshold is. But, he has put up with a lot over the last couple of years. I mean, look, I could only start my business because of his support. We saved up enough money for me to go, okay, look, worst case scenario, might have worked for 2 months, 3 months, we can afford it. And so, I really have to give kudos to him right from the beginning. Definitely. And, I think that even now, like if we could go back, it would just basically be like patience, we'll get there. But yes, it's going to be, sometimes we're just going to be flying by the seat of our pants and putting a leap of faith and spending money where we hope it's going to make us money.
Yeah. And for, all those BLG listeners out there, it is getting your partner on the same page as you is absolutely critical. So great advice, Louise, and I'm glad that your partner's been so supportive. So the next section is around the live section. So just take us through what a typical week looks like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm certainly more organized than I used to be. I remember when I first started working and I'd get to the end of my week and I'd look at how much I'd actually physically build out. And I was like, where did the rest of the week go? I don't understand, and I think that, for anybody who is just starting out, that's one thing I will say is be patient with yourself, because learning to work from home, or even just learning, even if you're in a share office, but learning to work for yourself, it takes a while to get into that rhythm. So for me now, I'm a lot more organized. I allocate specific things to certain times of specific days. I know which times during the week I'm working on my business and when I'm working on client work. A typical week for me at the moment is really, I have clients in all different time zones. So the UK clients at this time of year is painful. The clocks change to the point where 5 a.m. is about to become 8 p.m. their time. So I do get up early. My partner's up at 4:30 anyway. So it's, the house is up early. The dog loves it. He gets an early start. And, but yeah, so I'm up at about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning and, get some work done, take the dog out and then just work through the day really. And for me, it's really about being structured. I go to the gym twice during the week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at specific times. And, that's important to me too. But, it has taken work for me to get that split and find a routine that works for me.
Yeah, look, I think that's great. And sort of those different roles that you play. And it's really interesting when you talk about global clients. I'm a bit the same. I've got the UK clients in the mornings and then the US as well. So managing people across the globe. And, some now and again, I'll actually in the middle of the day sometimes just take a nana nap to catch up a bit of time. And
that's right.
I sort of work a bit more morning and later in the evening.
That tends to be what happens for me. So because I've got the gym in the middle of the day twice a week, and on those other days, I tend to have a full hour for lunch. And then I will have a nap afterwards. I think that it kind of just gets the afternoon started again. I like to explain it to people as almost working in two shifts.
Yeah, and I can't help but see that image of George Costanza under the desk sleeping at work. I don't know if you ever seen that Seinfeld episode, but every time I think of Nana Nap, that's what.
That's exactly it.
So the next section is around the give section. So, tell us about a cause or how you're going about giving back at this point.
It's a great question. I think that, if we look at, the three sections that you go through about, build, live, give, I think that I'm kind of in that working on the live at the moment, and getting that. I feel that once I can make sure I'm taking care of myself, physically and mentally, then, I'm in a much better position to be able to then contribute back to other people. And I think that there's things that I want to do for fun. I want to be able to allow time in my day for it. And there's also causes that I think are really important. And I think for me at the moment, one thing that is becoming really important to me is giving back to people that are just starting their business. I've got a program running at the moment, and I wanted to have the opportunity to give away a spot for that, and to someone who I felt really deserved it and could really do a lot with the information. And I want to be able to give more opportunities like that. And I think there's a big difference between me just discounting my services because someone's starting their business and being able to perhaps give back in another way, whether that just be, stopping the clock timer for a little while and just having a chat to them, and speaking more about the reasons behind why they're starting their business. And, sometimes it's just encouragement. I think a lot of people feel very isolated when they start their business. And I love going along to events where I feel like I can go, stick it out, just one more year. And this is the rough part. The rough part is, that 12 to 18 month where you start questioning whether you're making the right decisions, and you just need to get through it. So for me at the moment, I feel like I want to give back the same way that a lot of people did when I started my business. And I think it's incredibly important to support people that are a few years behind you.
Yeah, look, I think that's great. And I'll always remember the people that did it for me when I first started.
Yeah.
And I wish I had listened to more of their advice.
I know.
and there wasn't really podcasts like this out there then. You sort of had to, it wasn't as consistent. But that's brilliant. I love what you're doing, and I think that's right. And as you get more comfortable with the live, you start to do more things for the give perspective as you're more successful. So I think that's excellent. So the last section is around the take action section. It's really about giving the BLG listeners some practical advice to help them. So the first one is around personal productivity. So what's your number one personal productivity tip?
Yeah, I mean, definitely for me, it's been scheduling out my weeks so that I know. I mean, like I said early on, I'd get to the end of the week and I couldn't figure out why I, was only billing 25 hours when I'd worked like 40, 50 hours, and felt busy and felt tired. And it wasn't until I started making a really kind of, a good effort to manage my time that I actually started to see the momentum in my business, and not just momentum. It actually also meant I could see where the inefficiencies in my business were, where it was actually costing me money to work on clients. So, now I have a to-do list that's broken down not only into day of the week, but actually time slot as well. And even now I overcommit, I'm like, I can do this in this time slot, this in this time slot. And then I get to the end of the day and I'm still at like 3 o'clock and it's now 7 o'clock, and I realize just how much. But then when you look at the list, you're like, oh, that's not very much. I can get all that done today. But it's not till you start breaking it down that you realize, well, once I've actually done this, that's going to take an hour and then I've got to do this and this. So I think just being more aware. One of the really good apps I use is Harvest app. And it's got a Chrome extension to it as well. And, I just put all of my clients in there and I also put all my personal projects in there. And then that way I can turn the timer on whenever I'm working on something. And it starts to give you a really good overview of where you're actually working during your week. Because if you don't understand that, then you'll just continue as is, and you won't really realize that just by cutting out very simple things, you can actually save yourself a lot of time.
Yeah, look, great advice. And on apps, what are some of the other apps that might be on your mobile phone that you use on a regular basis to help you get more done?
I try not to use my mobile all that much. I find that when I was at the gym, it became very distracting. But there is some things that, I think from an app perspective, my Google Calendar is really great. And because and obviously that's on my phone as well. And that means if I'm out and about, I can see when I need to be back in terms of my next appointments, but I can also see what tasks I'm doing because all of my tasks are in my calendar. And they've got an extension for the Google Calendar that's got a world clock as well. So at any moment I can see what time it is in Pacific time, Central time, Eastern time, London, Adelaide, Brisbane, all those sorts of things. So, I think that really helps. But in terms of apps on my phone, I used to use a lot, but I've tried to cut down now, which, I'm just trying to kind of stick to the laptop.
Okay, excellent. And just on that, on Chrome, any other Chrome extensions that you recommend?
Yeah, so I use LastPass, and that's got a Chrome extension as well. So now, I remember most of my passwords. I don't really use it for that, but what I do use it for is trying to it just keeps everything logged in a lot quicker, especially if I'm on client calls. I don't want to be typing my password in all of the time trying to get to places. So it definitely saves me a lot of time, and obviously my clients share all their passwords through it as well. So it's definitely an app I love to use. I use ActiveCampaign for my email marketing. So I have the Chrome extension for that as well. So whenever I get an email into Gmail, I can see what tags that person has in ActiveCampaign, what lists they're on, things they've opted in for in the past. So perhaps if they're a client that's reaching out to book in a strategy session, I can start to get some idea of how much they know about me already without leaving Gmail. Which is really useful as well. I also have a Chrome extension, which if anyone is ever doing Facebook ads, I highly recommend. It's called the Facebook Pixel Helper. And it'll basically tell you if your Facebook pixel is installed on your page correctly. So as soon as you go to the page, it will tell you whether it's triggering or not. And sometimes it can just be really interesting to see whether you're getting triggered being on other people's pages as well. So, that's a great one to use. And then finally, WhatsApp. I do use that with a couple of my clients, especially my UK clients, just because of the time difference. I don't always encourage that people chat to clients in anything other than email because things can get lost. But for me, with a couple of my personal clients, it's just much easier for them to ping me. I have restricted outside of work hours for UK clients just because they wake up so late in my day and are offline before I wake up in the morning. So they have permission to use WhatsApp for quick questions that they've got.
Brilliant.
That's really much it. Yeah.
Excellent. Some great, and all the links will be in the show notes for all of those. So that's some great actionable advice. What about podcasts and books? Firstly, on podcasts, have you got any favorite podcasts you'd love to listen to?
Probably don't have a list off of the top of my head. I mean, we can definitely put some in the show notes. I can have a look back and have a look. But for me, I tend to get recommended podcasts from other people, from clients and things like that. And then I'll go back and I'll listen to them all. So Perpetual Traffic's a great one for anyone that is interested in marketing. It's run by a digital marketer. They have a great one. But generally, I tend to binge on podcasts and I'll listen to a lot at once while I'm out on a walk. My love, though, is Audible. To listening to books. I do, like I say, I tend to binge podcasts. I think I guess a lot because I don't leave the house a lot as well. So it allows me to just listen to a whole string of podcasts while I'm working one afternoon. Whereas with my Audible book, that tends to be where I listen to while I'm out walking the dog or at the gym. And so that's kind of, I get excited every time my credits get done every month so that I can buy something else to listen to.
Great. And what are you listening to at the moment?
That is a really good question. I'm trying to think which one I've got on at the moment. I was listening to just a normal story one the other day. Let me just have a quick look because that's a really good question.
Yeah, why you?
It was Ready, Fire, Aim by Michael Masterson. It's a great marketing book. I had to remember the title there. But for anyone who's interested in marketing, it's a fantastic book. It should be on anyone's list.
Yeah, and actually the prior podcast, so episode 21, we actually mentioned that book. And I totally agree on marketing, but also I agree just running a small business. I think, and certainly the focus on sales, that sales is the most important thing, I think is he does a great job in making that message come through. So, I love that.
And I've listened to it a lot of times. It's one of those ones that's on repeat. Every time I'm waiting on a new credit in Audible, it tends to be the one I start again. But in terms of my absolute favorite business book that I've ever listened to on Audible, and I think that, had I read the business books, it would be the same, is a book called Built to Sell. And I'm just trying to find the author's name. I can't see it off the top of my head, but it's a great book, all about it. I mean, he comes at it it's from a guy called John Werlow.
Yes.
And, he talks a lot about building it he actually uses an agency as an example, but it's a narrative. So he takes you through a fictional business being built in order to sell. And he does do a logo design agency, but it's not just for agency owners. He just uses that as an example of a service-based business. But it's not just for people who want to sell their businesses. It's for people who want to build a business that doesn't just rely on them as the sole person that can do the business. So he comes at it from, if you want to sell the business, you don't want to sell yourself back into a job. So you need to be able to get yourself out of the day-to-day. But it's a fantastic book for anyone who just wants to be able to get out of the day-to-day running of a business.
Yeah, brilliant. Excellent. So all of those links will be in the show notes. And some advice. So, you've had a wonderful journey, worked in numerous roles, and you've seen lots of small businesses, and particularly around the topics of online marketing and Facebook, which is so prevalent in our society these days. What's a piece of advice you'd love to leave the BLG listeners with?
I think it's just about really getting to understand and know your clients on, an emotional and a language level. I think that even for me in my business, my ideal client has evolved over time. As I've worked with more and more clients, I've understood their problems and what they need. Doesn't mean I need to solve all the problems for all of the people, but I start to get an idea of how I best serve people. And, and then I can pivot my business. I still have the flexibility whilst I'm small to be able to pivot to go, well, I'd love to do that for more people. Here's the group of people I can do that for. But I think even in your marketing, it's really important, if you want to be able to stand out and do something that is different from your competitors, you really just need to understand the psychology behind what it is that people really want, and understand that what that their issue is and how to solve it might not be what they think the issue is straight away. So you need to work backwards from what do they think the issue is, and then once you've got them on your list, or once you start marketing to them, you can educate them in what the actual problem is. But you can't start there if they don't identify as that being the problem. So I think they're both linked, but I think it's a great piece of advice that I wish I'd known earlier on as well.
Yeah, and I love what you said earlier, which was meet clients where they are at. I think that's such a powerful message. So one that I myself often lose track of. So it's been a great reminder. So where can people find out more about you, Louise?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you can find me on LinkedIn, Louise Griffiths, and also my website, leftbrainonlinemarketing.com. They're the best places to find me. And we also have a Facebook page as well, Left Brain Online Marketing.
Excellent. Well, look, I really appreciate you sharing your journey today with BLG listeners, and also the great advice you've given. The show notes are going to be packed with great advice and links. So I really appreciate that. Really love working with you. I know we've worked with you. We'll continue to do that. And I wish you every success in the future. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Build, Live, Give show. If you found this show helpful, please share it with others so we can build businesses, live great lives, and give back to the community. If you would like to join the BLG community, go to our website, www.buildlivegive.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.